Okay, as we wait for people to sign on, I'm just going to do a little bit of an introduction. So, hi everybody, I'm Alex from the Leaders Award team, and welcome to this International Women in Engineering Week of interviews featuring Alex Knight this morning. Just before we get to Alex, I'll run through what's going to happen during the session. As there are lots of people kind of watching the event on Facebook and here, we've muted everybody except for myself and Alex for the whole event, so there are no kind of interruptions or distractions. The first part of the event will be Alex's presentation, which will then be followed by the second part, which is the Q&A. Please feel free to type in your questions at any point during this session. Hopefully then when we get to the Q&A section after the presentation, we can get straight into answering as many of your questions as possible. Please use the Q&A facility for this if you're on Zoom, or type in your questions in the comment section if you're watching on Facebook as well. I'm just going to explain a little bit about what the Leaders Award, if you're an engineer, what would you do competition is all about. So its main aim is to inspire young people from 3 to 19 to look at the world around them and design solutions to problems. These can be big problems or small problems, such as getting out of bed in the morning, to what the worldwide problem which you're experiencing right now. We provide opportunities for you to meet and interview engineering professionals, just like we're doing today, to inspire you to think of ideas and start designing some of your own inventions, and use our available resources on our website at leadersaward.com. Our suggestion is you make this into a bit of a weekly challenge, interviewing different engineering professionals online every week. Now, without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Alex Knight. Hi, Alex.
Hi.
What I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop sharing the PowerPoint there, and I should be able to, in a second, go on to Alex's PowerPoint presentation as well.
Great, thank you.
I'll just make sure that's showing in a second. Okay, just let me know if can you see that, Alex, there?
Yeah, that's perfect, thank you.
Fantastic. And is it okay if we start sharing your video as well, Alex?
Sure.
Brilliant. Perfect, I can see you there as well. Yeah, so over to you, Alex.
Great. Hi, everyone. So I'm Alex Knight. I'm a chartered mechanical engineer. I've been working in engineering for over 15 years now. And for the majority of my career, I've been an engineering consultant. And so what that means is that rather than working in just one area of engineering industry, I've worked in a whole range of different areas and applied my engineering skills and problem solving skills to solve problems in lots of different industries. So I'll tell you a bit more about that later. But first, in my first slide, I want to talk about what is engineering. So if you just go to the first slide, please, Alex.
Yeah.
Thank you. So engineering sometimes has misconceptions about what it actually is. Quite often when you see pictures of engineers, they're wearing hard hats, they're doing sort of manual hands-on things, which of course is a part of engineering. But the bigger part of engineering is really using a foundation in things like maths and science to solve real world problems. So as a headline, I'd say engineers solve problems. Then as a next level down, I'd say engineers innovate and create solutions to big problems in the world. So innovate means you're thinking about new things that don't exist yet, or new ways of doing something better and creating better solutions. Now, engineers use a foundation of STEM. And if you haven't heard of STEM before, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and maths. So some of these subjects that you study at school, and then you turn them into your job and applying it to real world situations. Now, we can also call STEM STEAM, which is adding the A in there, which stands for arts. So engineering is very creative. It's actually using your creativity to think about different ways of solving problems. So it's very important that engineers have an element of creativity in there, which is why sometimes people refer to STEM and sometimes STEAM. And it's about using STEM or STEAM as a foundation, so the foundation subjects that you learn at school, to then train yourself to think like an engineer and apply these skills to solving real world problems. And ultimately, it's about improving quality of life. Next slide, please. So there's lots of different types of engineering. So if you click on that, Alex, these are the normally the four sort of key types of engineering that we talk about, four main streams at the very sort of basic level of what is engineering. Civil engineering, which is about the built environment around us, things like roads, bridges, railways, buildings, etc. Chemical engineering, which is looking at really the science of chemicals, on a molecular level, looking at processes and how we can engineer those things to improve the world around us. And that's involved in things like food engineering, process engineering, the energy industry. Then we've got electrical and electronic engineering as a third sort of real basis of engineering, which is all around electronics and electrical things. So like power, everything you use in your house, from sort of like TV, microwave, phones, all of those things have had engineers applying electronic and electrical engineering to them. And mechanical engineering is another foundation, and that's what I studied at university, mechanical engineering. And that's really looking at systems, machines, sort of how you look at the physical world around us and pull things together to create things that make life for humans easier and better. So if you just click through some of the next pictures, Alex. So on here, I've got some examples of what, real world engineering is. So we've got things like bridges, as I mentioned, bridges and roads. We've also got, you keep clicking through, things like aviation, aeroplanes, cars, the automotive industry. We've got other things like renewable energy. So not just, how do you actually get the power to power the things that you use in your everyday lives? How do you generate that power from using the world's resources like solar and wind? Also, things that you may not consider are engineering, things like sports engineering. So you could study sports engineering at university. Biomedical engineering, huge amounts of engineering equipment used in the medical profession. Then think about applying sort of sports and medical together, and you get things like Paralympians using engineering products to help them do their job better, so run faster, for example. Also, you've got water engineering, looking at sustainable water solutions. How do we best use water in society, and especially in places where it's difficult to access clean water? Also, another element of engineering you may not have considered is food engineering. There's a huge amount of engineering goes into the food industry. We've also got process industry. So, looking at how we create and improve chemical processes to improve our lives. As another example of electronic engineering there, you've got somebody building like a mini tank using electronics. Also, maybe recently you saw the launch of the SpaceX and NASA Crew Dragon, and this was, an amazing step forward in moving towards commercial space travel. That you may have heard of Elon Musk, who is also not only in charge of SpaceX, but things like Tesla. And, these are fantastic engineers out there making real steps forward. And of course, this last picture shows toy engineering. It's actually a job to be a toy engineer. And, looking at how can we create more fun ways that children like yourselves can engage with the toys that you play with. They have had engineers looking at them to design, create, build those kind of solutions. So as you can see from this, there really is an enormous sort of possibility of different types of careers you can go into with an engineering foundation. If you go on to the next slide, Alex. So my story as an engineer, the first picture is where I started actually after I graduated. I did a degree in mechanical engineering, and then I did a master's in medical engineering because I wanted to go into the medical field. And my first job was working for a small company that was designing an improvement to how you could diagnose and monitor asthma, and particularly looking at asthma monitoring and diagnosis for children. So I loved that job. That was fantastic. I got to work in different hospitals, do research and development, and I did that for a couple of years. And then I wanted to move into consultancy, which is where I've stayed. And the reason I wanted to move into consultancy was because I got to try lots of different engineering industries. And one of my first projects in consultancy was working on submarines. So obviously that was very different from medical engineering, but very exciting. And we actually, if you click on the next picture, the team I was working in was designing a new way to inspect the essentially the propeller shaft of a submarine. So the thing that drives it through the water and drives it up and down in the water, we were inspecting that. And also as part of consultancy, I did more sort of medical related stuff and sports related stuff, designing novel equipment for injured soldiers and also Paralympians, and also disabled children. I worked with a group of disabled children to design a concept wheelchair for them. And then I sort of expanded and worked in the power industry, and one of my projects was based out in Thailand. So I got to go and visit Thailand and work over there for a bit, looking at power distribution. And then I moved to a different company where I work now called Amy, which is a civil engineering company. And one of my main projects that I was working on last year was looking at turning, this is the Forth Road Bridge crossing in Scotland, turning this bridge into an intelligent bridge by applying sensors and then using basically maths to be able to work out the condition of the bridge in real time. And we also use a thing called artificial intelligence or predictive analytics. So the next picture sort of shows an image that you might think of when you think of sort of computers thinking. So essentially using maths and numbers to look at what's happened in the past and then predict what might happen in the future. And this is very helpful as engineers because it helps us make decisions about what we might want to do with those engineering things that we are looking after. What I've also done recently is start a new company called STEMazing, and that's where I'm looking at inspiring children to consider STEM, pursuing STEM as a career, and also helping women in engineering, because we don't have enough women in engineering. So helping girls and women to have really exciting, fulfilling engineering careers. So my main three sort of values as for STEMazing is be curious, be creative, and be courageous. And those are kind of the three things that are really important to continue on, to keep that sort of like, I don't know, feeling of like excitement and wonderment about science and maths and how we can apply it in the real world. Great. So my next slide is what skills make a good engineer? Well, the first two are maths and science, essentially. So, you know, learning about why things work. Why is a great way to start a sentence, asking questions. So using maths and science, and also learning how to just play around with things, test things, you know, look at why does that work? How could I make that better? What if I did it slightly differently? So carrying out little experiments and thinking, what would happen if I tested this? It's a good way to think as an engineer. And also having ideas. So the next icon is a little light bulb. If you just click on that, Alex, there you go. So having ideas and just thinking, I wonder how I could make that better, or I wonder if I did that, what would happen? So these are all things that help make good engineers. And then carrying on, we've got artistic, so creativity. As I said before, it's very important for engineers to be creative, and working in teams. I mean, I think in my whole career of over 15 years, very rarely have I done anything completely on my own. I'm always working in teams of people that have different skills, and we work together to create the solution. And then the last one is, of course, asking questions and curiosity. So always questioning, how could we improve something, or why does that work? And how could we make it better or more useful for different types of people to use it? So on this sort of slide here, you can see the different types of things that I think make a good engineer, and having sort of elements of all of those will definitely stand you in good stead if you want to think about being an engineer in the future. Okay, now the next slide is, why do we need engineers? Now this is very important. There's lots of problems in the world at the moment, and we really need more engineers. We don't have enough engineers. We need more engineers to help us solve these problems. Things like being able to access clean water around the world. The problem which you've probably heard of, having lots of plastics in the ocean, being able to clear up our environment, clean up our world, and look after our planet a lot better. and even think, how do we explore outside of our planet for future, for future human life? Where will that take us? So things like I mentioned before, like SpaceX and NASA looking to explore outside of our planet, engineers are thinking about those kind of big problems. So on our planet, making our life better, and beyond our planet, how do we explore that? So it's from those big problems down to, little daily challenges that we all face. Engineers are constantly working to try and improve the world around us. Okay, and then so my last slide is really so to think about when you look out and about, what can you see that's related to engineering? Engineering is literally everywhere, from the car that you drive to school in, to the house that you live in, to when you go to theme parks and those theme park rides being designed and built and maintained by engineers. Literally everything that you come across in your life, in your daily life, will have been touched in some way by engineers in terms of helping to create those solutions for you to use. So it's really important that we just raise our awareness of what engineering is and think, how do we sort of make engineering more central to our thoughts and our actions as society, and what could you, as our next generation of engineers, do to help the world around us? So thank you for that. That was just a brief introduction to me and what I feel engineering is. Happy to take any questions that anybody's got.
Thank you very much, Alex, for that brilliant presentation. Thank you so much. What I'll do is I'll just stop sharing my screen there. I'll make sure that you can also see me as well as asking the questions. So what the first question I'm going to come to, and we've had a few coming through on the Q&A facility there, so I'm going to go to that as well, is what's the favorite part of your job, would you say, Alex?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the favorite part of my job is when I get to work with people to think about new ideas to solving problems. So quite often, as an engineering consultant, I will go into a new company that I haven't worked with before, and they'll tell me about a problem they've got, and I will work with them and my team of engineers to think about, how can we help in this situation, and how can we apply what we've learned from previous projects to help this new project. And so I love that initial, what we call brainstorming activity, where we really just discuss and talk about potential ideas and solutions, and then home in on what we're actually going to do about it. That whole sort of process is very creative and really gets you thinking hard.
So we've got a good question here from, I think it's from Lindy. She's saying, hi, Alex. She's been studying chemical engineering at uni. And she's been, however, wanting to become an engineering consultant for a long time, but doesn't have much real life experience of it. So she's wondering, what would you suggest her to do? Any suggestions would be much appreciated, she said.
Fantastic. Well, obviously chemical engineering is a fantastic grounding in engineering, so a brilliant foundation to have. And it sounds similar to me, where I worked for a company for a couple of years and then thought about getting into consultancy because I wanted the variety. And really, I would suggest investigating the different engineering consultancies that are out there. So there's lots of different types of engineering consultancies that you can work for, from I can give some examples. So I worked for Fraser Nash Consultancy. I now work for Amy Strategic Consulting. There are lots of other engineering consultancies out there that some of them are very broad and work across a whole range of different industry sectors, and some focus on a more narrow few. So it really depends on what you want to do. But I would say, go for it, because it really helps expand your experience as an engineer and give you exposure to lots of different types of problems to solve. I'm more than happy for her to find me on LinkedIn, and I can have a further conversation about that, because I'd be more than happy to give as much advice as I can.
Brilliant, some really good advice there. Thanks, Alex. So Rabia is asking, why did you choose engineering as the career that you wanted to pursue?
So when I was at school, I studied maths, physics and chemistry for A levels, not because I was particularly great at them, actually. I was okay at them. But I just felt like out of all the subjects, they would give me a good grounding in life and open doors to giving me a good sort of career. And I felt like at the time I wanted to choose something, I felt like I could get a really good job, you know, a secure job. So after studying maths and physics, sort of in my first year of school, my dad suggested engineering. He's an engineer. And also my physics teacher suggested engineering. And I went to an all-girls school, so engineering wasn't really talked about at all. I don't remember getting any career advice about engineering. But because my dad and my physics teacher had suggested it, I looked into it, and I went to a summer school in between my first and second year of A-levels at Brunel University, which was a space science summer school. And I absolutely loved it. And I just felt like really comfortable in that environment at university. And I actually then chose to go to Brunel University to study engineering. And again, I didn't really know what it was or what type of engineer I wanted to be, but I just knew there were lots of options. And that if I did this for the next 3 or 4 years, lots of doors would open for me. And that's exactly what's happened. And I've still continued to just try different things. I've never really settled on a particular niche in engineering. I've done all sorts of things, and hopefully that's what I'll continue to do.
Fab. So yeah, so really, obviously, you found it a really interesting career to get into, and that's kind of how you pursued it there as well. A question here as well: are you working at home at the moment, Alex, during obviously the COVID-19, and how are you finding working at home?
Yes, I am working at home. I've worked at home sort of on and off for quite a while now because I work part-time at Amy. I work 3 days a week there, and the reason why I chose to work part-time was because I've got 2 young children. They're 5 and 7 now. I wanted to spend a bit more time with them and also have time for the volunteering sort of stuff I do as well outside of work. So I've kind of worked flexibly and at home for a little while, but certainly with lockdown and COVID-19, I've been working at home permanently. I find it actually quite challenging, not having face-to-face interaction. Conference calls, you know, are fine, but I also find that quite tiring being on conference calls permanently. And it still means you can get the job done, but it's very different. And you know, I'm looking forward to getting back to some face-to-face working, because I feel like that's where you really generate that energy and those great ideas. But I've also learned how to work more effectively at home and remotely. And so I think, you know, it has its ups and its downs.
Yeah, it has its challenges, but I'm sure, like you said, it's got its rewards as well. Being able to spend time with people as well.
Yeah.
So, what's the biggest project that you've worked on, do you think, Alex? I know you touched on a few in your presentation. What do you think is the biggest one, or most interesting one you think you've worked on?
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously the Forth Road Bridge Crossing project was a brilliant project. That was a very big project in terms of ambitious project, because that level of using that level of data analytics combined with engineering bridges had not been done before. So that was really exciting and involved a lot of different companies and people working together. It was a huge project to coordinate. And also I think it's a while ago now, but the submarine project I did again, because that was really breaking new ground and making an enormous difference to how submarines are looked after and managed, and had an enormous impact, you know, saving millions of pounds for the Ministry of Defence in how they replace parts of submarines. So, and again, it felt like a really rewarding project because it was combining sort of hands-on physical engineering, because we actually had to go to the submarines and we actually had to physically inspect parts of submarines, but also creative, because we were essentially designing a new kind of robot to go in and do these inspections, and using the maths side of it, because we had to look at maths of how this particular part of the submarine we were investigating worked and how it might fail and how it might degrade, and that involves some maths calculations. So it really was a combination of lots of different things, and that was a very big project in terms of money size and time wise, and also big in terms of the impact it had.
Brilliant. Yeah. So it seems like a lot of projects that you've worked on have been very, very interesting and big projects that you've worked on as well. Rebbe is asking, so where do actually engineers like yourself actually work? Obviously not during COVID-19. So she said, because they know where doctors and lawyers and other jobs have certain places where they work. So where do engineers actually work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one of those things where really it's a whole variety. So the majority of my time I would spend in an office and actually working at a computer. But say maybe a couple of days a week, I would go out to a site, like a client site. So for example, one of my projects was at Heathrow Airport. So I would go and have a look at the baggage handling system at Heathrow Airport, which is like a roller coaster for our bags that go on planes. And all, you know, enormous roller coaster that you don't actually see, it's behind closed doors. So I would go behind the scenes and have a look at that and talk to the engineers there. So it's, I would say certainly in my job, it's office based, but I do go out and visit sites. And obviously part of that involves traveling to different places as well. So like I said, I've done a project in Thailand last, was it November? I was in Quito in Ecuador, and just basically going where organizations that, you know, need help solving their problems are based. So it's not like I go to the same place every single day. I have to go out and about, which actually is part of the reason why I love it.
So with there being International Women in Engineering Day tomorrow, Alex, are you doing anything special for it this year? Is there anything interesting that you've done in the past with this day?
Yeah, so INWED, International Women in Engineering Day, is a fantastic day where we sort of shine a spotlight on women in engineering. As I said, there's not enough women in engineering. So out of all engineers in the UK, only about 12% are women, which is, you know, not enough at all when you think that 50% of the population are women. And ideally, we want more women in engineering because we want more what we call diversity, which is different types of people who have different perspective on life and bring a different viewpoint to help, you know, with the problem solving process, which really needs lots of different people's ideas. And so Women in Engineering Day is great to showcase different women doing different types of engineering jobs, and also hopefully inspire girls and young women to pursue engineering. So in the past, I've done lots of things like hosting schools to have a look around where I work, and sort of going into schools and doing talks. Now, obviously this year we can't do any of that face-to-face stuff. So I'm doing a couple of webinars like this. We're also, because I'm on the board of the Women's Engineering Society, we are running a work shadowing week, which is virtual, but giving students age 16 plus, the opportunity to do virtual work shadowing in different engineering organizations. So I'm taking part in that. And also I've been doing every single day this month, I've been putting a video of a woman in STEM out on social media to show the different types of engineering careers. And it's so interesting seeing how every single different woman that I've done a video of is doing something different and having a fantastic, interesting career, and still in engineering generally, but done something very different and making a very different impact in the world.
So very, very busy for yourself then at the moment, working from home, but I bet you've been on lots of webinars and doing lots of talks. And I'm sure when things start to get back more to normal, you can go more into more schools and everything.
Yeah.
Which we run as well. We have engineers going into schools, and I think it's a really important cause to try and get more females engaged in engineering, which I think will be fantastic.
Yeah.
We've got another question here, and I think this is quite a nice one to end on as well. Really, really good questions. So thank you for everyone who's sending those questions, and thank you, Alex, for answering all those questions as well. It's from Sudha. So Sudha's asking, hi, Alex, what would your advice be to students who would like to pursue a career in engineering?
So I would say there's really sort of no bad advice because there's so many different options in engineering. I did mechanical engineering because I just thought that was going to give me the best general grounding. But actually, all of the different types of engineering give you a great grounding. So either going and doing, ideally, the maths and sciences A levels that will help you get into university to do an engineering degree if you want to. But there's also other routes into engineering, like apprenticeship schemes and degree apprenticeships where you get paid to do your degree, or apprenticeships where you can learn to be an engineering technician as well and do different types of engineering. And so I'd say explore, there's so many different types of engineering that really think about what are you personally interested in, and research online the different types of engineering, and then look at how you would then take that forward, be that an apprenticeship or going into university. Trying to get some work experience so you can experience the real world of engineering would be really fantastic. And through companies like the Women's Engineering Society, you can get those opportunities. And just do more of these types of webinars and use Primary Engineer to give you an insight into different jobs out there in engineering and different routes that people have pursued, because there's so many different options. But it is really all comes down to a similar grounding in maths and science, creativity, problem solving. More and more these days, we're seeing things like computing, software engineering, data analytics as well, and robotics, electronics all coming together. So really, the options are there for you to pursue whatever it is that you love into engineering.
Fantastic. Really good advice there, Alex. So thank you for that. Big thank you for taking time out of your day to do this for us. And I hope you enjoyed answering those questions and doing your presentation this morning.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the questions. Brilliant.
But we've also put an online survey into the chat. So if you want to complete that after the interview today, I hope you've all been inspired to take on our Leaders Award. If you were an engineer, what would you do competition, and start designing some of your own inventions, and use our resources at leadersaward.com. And please join us for our upcoming interviews today and this week, all for International Women in Engineering Day, which is actually tomorrow, but we're doing a week of interviews, which is, I think, brilliant. So thank you very much, everyone. I think we'll end it there. Bye, Alex.
Thanks very much. Bye, everyone.